We're here at Bonhams and Butterfields with Thomas Lindgren, and we're getting ready for the Natural History Auction. Now, Tom, your title here with Bonhams and Butterfields is you're the co-director?
I'm the co-director of Natural History for Bonhams and Butterfields Auctioneers.
Oh, and what do you have next to you? This is a very special collection that you have.
The collection that we are offering this Sunday comes from Bakersfield, California. It's been personally dug by a very famous amateur paleontologist known as Robert Ernst. His collection has been on exhibit at the Buena Vista Museum of Natural History in Bakersfield for the past 17 years. 3 years ago, unfortunately, Bob passed away. Since that time, his estate has asked if we would do the appraisal and actually the dispersal and actual sale of the specimens from the museum, giving the museum an opportunity to actually buy them originally. They are still going to be participating in purchasing some of the items back from the auction this Sunday, but what we have is such a very specific collection to a California site that's world-renowned.
What's the site it's from?
It's called Shark's Tooth Hill.
Okay.
And internationally, it's considered one of the finest sites to find fossil shark's teeth, especially the Megalodon carcharodon, which was the great white ancestor that was an animal that grew up to maybe 80 feet in length.
Wow.
Yes.
Now this
but behind me right now, one of only 3 skeletons that have ever been found is Alodesmus. This was a giant sea lion. Now this is a cast of the original. We have the original for sale, but when they are cast, each individual bone has been molded and then cast and then reassembled as an entire animal. So what we're looking at is a representation of what the original cast or what the original skeleton looked like, but in cast form. This came directly out of the museum. This is, like I said, there's only 3 known specimens. All 3 are owned by the Ernst family, and we're only offering one of the 3 in this auction for sale.
That's really pretty cool.
We're talking approximately $125,000, $150,000.
How old is it?
This is 15 million years.
15 million years?
Yes.
Wow.
15 million years ago, Bakersfield was underwater. It actually was a feeding site for the sharks. And it was a kind of a shallow bay area, so what we find is maybe 10 or 12 different species of shark that came into that area and were feeding on the mammalian animals that lived at that time and actually would do their birthing. So we find a lot of baby animals that had been eaten and killed by the sharks during a feeding frenzy.
Oh, that's pretty interesting.
Right.
It's very interesting.
Behind us is the only set of mako shark teeth that have ever been found from the Bakersfield site and reassembled into an actual jaw. Each one of these teeth, if they were available for sale, would bring maybe $100, $150 a piece. And we've got many rows of the teeth within this original tooth jaw. The actual jaw, the cartilaginous part, has been restored, but all the teeth are original. It's one of the real prizes that Bob Ernst felt that he had from his collection at Shark's Tooth Hill. On the table, we don't have the whole whale out, but this is a baby baleen whale. The entire skeleton is actually in boxes underneath here, but it has not been assembled yet. But we put the skull out on top. This was also one of the prize finds for Bob Ernst himself. He found this and suddenly became nationally known across the country because every newspaper wanted to hear about this baby whale that was found in Southern California.
Yeah, in Bakersfield.
And we're talking, and this is about a $50,000 piece. When and if it's ever mounted, it'll double, maybe triple in its value. But because it was from a museum collection, the mounting never occurred. It was kept just for scientific research. And they had a little small exhibit where people could see what was happening to the skeleton.
Well, that's pretty interesting.
In this case, we have the only dugong. A dugong is like an ancient manatee. The manatee was a sea cow, but they're found certainly in Florida quite often, but this is the only skull and partial skeleton that's ever been found here in Southern California. It was found by Bob Ernst at his Bakersfield site.
Wow, this is a pretty nice collection, isn't it?
This is a wonderful collection. Here are 2 Alodesmus skulls. The Alodesmus skull on the right is actually the skull that goes with the mounted cast. The rest of the skeleton is actually in boxes underneath the table also. The skull on the left is a female skull, and unfortunately I can't pull it out right now. I don't have the keys. But the back of the skull has an embedded shark's tooth in it. So we know that a shark actually killed and ate this animal.
Oh, that's kind of interesting.
Once again, you know, the Allodesmus is actually a very rare animal, but because Bob worked for over 15 years in the sediments near Bakersfield, he found a number of Allodesmus. This is another wonderful Allodesmus skull with some of the cervical vertebrae from the neck still in their original nodule. Preparation was never completely finished because Bob wanted to keep this more for science rather than as a display specimen. Now, one of my favorite pieces from the collection, which eventually I'm sure someone, whether it be a museum or a collector, will actually mount and put together, is this giant sea turtle. The skull alone is nearly 1.5 feet long.
That's the skull from the sea turtle?
This is an amazing specimen,
Wow.
simply because of its tremendous size. We're looking at a shell that probably would have been at least 5 feet across and maybe 7 feet long, just the shell alone. But once again, it's one of the pieces that has never really been studied, hasn't been scientifically worked with, so it doesn't have a name. It's probably, at this point, it's an undescribed species. Now, our hope is that the Buena Vista Museum or some of the other museums here in Southern California come to the plate and actually purchase these and take them back for continued scientific review. There was a large collection of what are called Desmostylus, a very rare animal, once again a mammal, where they're normally only found, the only fossils you find from a Desmostylus would be the teeth. And the teeth of the Desmostylus from Shark's Tooth Hill are absolutely phenomenal. Their enamel, their size, their color, highly collectible by collectors all over the world. Along with that are some of the Carcharodon teeth, Carcharodon megalodon, Carcharodon carcharias, the large ancestor of the great white. These are all personally dug by Bob and part of his collection that he had loaned to the museum. So this will be the first time they've ever been offered for sale. So we have a tremendous amount of interest in the teeth themselves, simply because Shark's Tooth Hill megalodon teeth are not common and rarely come to the market. So that being said, let me quickly show you the whale skulls.
Oh, we've got to see these.
Now, both of these whale skulls are very heavy, quite large, but still very rare. Even though Shark's Tooth Hill is known for the whales that are found out there along with the shark's teeth, there are also numerous whales that were eaten and actually completely chewed up by the sharks themselves. We find individual vertebrae every now and then, but to find actual skeletons or even the skulls is quite unusual. Bob's method of excavating these was to take a little grater or a little backhoe and just skim across the surface, and he did that on both of these specimens when he found it. So the top of both specimens was scraped off by a machine when he found it. That's the way he actually located these. So, you know, this is not the natural morphology, but this is what happens when you're in the process of trying to open up a quarry and you have a bone the size of a skull that you actually end up finding. Now, I don't know if you remember, but about a year ago, we sold a fully mounted skeleton similar to this, of this same fish, at our auction in Las Vegas for $422,000. Now, this is the skull and the front portion of the body of a similar specimen, a little bit smaller, but it's in for a very nominal reserve of about $7,500.
That seems too reasonable.
It's an exceptional specimen, but came from a private collection. This was not a dealer, this was not a museum, it was a private collection. The collector of the specimen did his own preparation and did his own mounting, and then asked if we would, at this point he's hurting for money, so he'd like to get it sold. And this is what this economy is doing right now, is bringing individual collectors and private collectors out of the woodwork, because there's a time right now where there's a financial need. So we've had access to some very interesting items. The favorite pieces in this auction of mine is this exceptional ammonite from Alberta, Canada. Now, I've sold these in this neighborhood of 18 or 20 inches in diameter. This one's over 2 feet in diameter, 25 and a half inches.
Okay.
Spectacular reds and greens in the mother of pearl on the shell of the specimen. Just truly one of the largest pieces that I've ever seen like this to come out of Canada. This, once again, comes from a private collector here in Southern California.
That is pretty huge. It looks like it should just be mounted like that, too.
You see the greens in this area? It's just spectacular. And of course, it's in matrix, and it's got a backing on it such that it can be mounted on a wall as a piece of art. And to me, these ammonites are very artistic and represent nature at its best as art. The shell of this ammonite is known as ammonite, and it's considered one of only 2 fossils that are known as gemstones, actually certified as gemstones. The shell of the ammonite, ammonite is the name they gave to it, and then also amber is considered a gemstone. Only 2 fossils with gemstone designations. So it's quite interesting. A fossil as art, but also as a gemstone designation.
It is interesting.
What's really fun, in our catalog it doesn't show the size, but these were actually teaching charts from an old collection that we had an opportunity to actually come across when we were visiting Denver this past summer. And individual charts like this have been used as interior art for the last 50 years, but we have a collection of 10 of these prints that represent different types of fossil fauna, everything from the megatherium, the giant sloth, to the giant elephants, to the fishes. It's just an amazing crossover between paleontology and art, and the form of the diagrams that were used in a teaching format back in the 1800s. This is a wonderful specimen. This is a woolly rhino from Siberia. Most of the time that we get a woolly rhino, when they come out, you don't have the original horn. The horn on this is actually made up of hair. It's not a horn in the traditional sense, but it's really tightly compacted hair. And once these are found, when the permafrost actually goes out of the ground in Siberia, we end up having them disintegrate and decay very quickly. So when the horn was found with this animal, they were able to actually save it, preserve it. After it dries out, it smells terribly when it's being in the process of curing. But once it's completely dried and then sealed, it can be mounted again with the original skull. But this is original lower jaws from the same animal. The woolly rhino lived at the time of the woolly mammoth, in for about $30,000. Once again, we get into the decor section of paleontology. This is a fossil palm frond from the Green River of Wyoming, about 50 million years old. And this is actually, we call this a tile mural, but these are individual tiles with 50 million year old fossil fish that have been assembled by an artist into a very aesthetic school of fishes being chased by predatory fish. These have been, murals like this have been exhibited in art galleries for the last 10 years now, to the point where they've become a very hot commodity. So we're excited to have had the artist actually give us an opportunity to sell this in our auction.
That's real nice.
This is a story that could take volumes to fill. Was originally consigned to me 2 years ago for our New York auction from London. When it arrived from London, it was completely destroyed and demolished. It was in thousands of pieces. So over the past year and a half, we've had a special preparer to work on this to put it back together and remount it, to the point where it's actually better than it originally was, and now is going to be offered for the first time at auction. It's been in a private collection for a very, very long time in England, going back to at least 30, 40 years. So we were so disappointed when it came broken, but now we're excited because the repair work was beyond what they could have ever expected. It's now truly a piece of natural art. And in for about $15,000 to $20,000. It's a Ligocene tortoise from the Badlands of Wyoming or South Dakota, 35 million years old.
35 million?
35 million years old.
Wow.
And then one of my favorites, of course, are the giant snake skins. On the top, as you can see, we have a python that measures 25 feet in length. This was a snake that was large enough to actually chase down and catch an adult human being.
I would run.
I would love to see it, but absolutely that would strike fear into my heart. The anaconda skin, being at about 12 feet, is not an exceptionally large anaconda, but it gives you an idea of the size and just the tremendous girth that these animals would have as they grew. And they grew throughout their life. They never stopped growing until they died. And one of my favorites, of course, because I'm a fan of Uma Thurman and Kill Bill, the black mamba. One of the most deadly snakes in the world. But, you know, it's nice that you can use something like this for interior design and decor without having to fear for your life. And then The ultimate of fossil sea lilies is the crinoids from Holzmaden, Germany. And this one doesn't have anything other than dramatic impact, tremendous beauty, and unbelievable provenance. Nearly 180 million years old, this was an echinoderm that was floating upside down. This would be a piece of wood that attached to, and as it grew, it hung upside down, and it was a plankton filter feeder. And now is encased in some of the most beautiful matrix you could imagine, with the touch of an artist. The preparation is done in such a manner that the pyritized ammonite is fully exposed and three-dimensional on a black slate with amazing definition and color curves.
That is a gorgeous piece.
This is in for about $60,000 to $70,000, but truly an artistic presentation of one of the most impressive sea lilies I've ever seen.
It's the most I've seen while I've been covering you.
Isn't it beautiful?
Mm-hmm.
Spectacular. And when you think 180 million years old.
Wait, 180 million?
180 million years.
Wow.
At the very beginning of the age of the dinosaurs, this was floating in the oceans. It gives a feeling of being a flower or a plant, but it's actually an animal. Does that look like a Christmas catalog? Or
It
what?
does.
Look at those beautiful colors. It looks almost like snow. That's beautiful. I think it's
It
just
is a gorgeous
an
catalog.
exceptional cover. So I'm hoping we certainly get the response that our auction deserves. We have tremendous items in this auction, and I'm excited to see what happens on Sunday.
You have a lot of really good pieces. Well, we'll be looking for you at Bonhams.com.
At Bonhams.com, Natural History Auction, December 12th, starts at 10 a.m.
Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you.